Okay, here are your chapter 4 notes. So chapter 4, we're looking at ecosystems and population change. To start with, we have to look at the characteristics of an ecosystem. So interactions within the ecosystem, so some things we need to know. So ecology is kind of what we're going through in this unit, or this chapter, I guess. Ecology is the study of interactions between organisms and their living and non-living environments. Okay, we've already discussed what abiotic and biotic factors are, so it should be easy. Okay, a couple other things you had to know kind of from your unit 1. So population, remember, is a group of organisms that are of the same species that live in the same habitat or ecosystem at the same time. So population, like you can find a population of deer, okay, they're the ones kind of living in close quarters, okay, in one ecosystem in the prairies compared to like a different population of deer that might live like in the Rockies or somewhere in a different ecosystem. Okay, community is all of the different organisms of various species that share habitat or ecosystem. Okay, so community includes all the different species. So again, looking at like grasslands, you'd have deer, you'd have um, mice, even like the plants, like a couple trees, the grasses, antelope, whatever else might live there. Okay. Ecotones and biodiversity. So ecosystems have somewhat boundaries, but organisms can actually move back and forth between the ecosystems. It's not like there's a fence or something stopping the deer from the grasslands from going up onto the mountains to eat some because there's better food there, anything like that. Okay, so the transition area between ecosystems is what we call an ecotone. They have the greatest or greater biodiversity, and if we're explaining why we do this usually in the class, but if you kind of think about it, you get the population or like the communities from both ecosystems that kind of share that ecotone. They overlap in that area. And so in the ecotone between the pond and the field, species from both ecosystems meet. And so that's just a simple, like the pond is its own ecosystem. It has different things living in it. Okay, and then the field and the area around it, okay, they're meeting there, they're using the water to survive and so on. Okay, and so yeah, that would be the ecotone would be the space kind of between. Okay, their roles in the ecosystem. So kind of the role or almost like a job is what we call the ecological niche. So it's an organism's role in the ecosystem. So it consists of a couple different things. Okay, so its place in the food web. Okay, so what it eats and what eats it. Its habitat, okay, where it lives. Its breeding area. So like how far does it go to breed? Some species move all around, like if you think of whales in the oceans, okay, and then the time of day in which it's most active. Okay, all part of the species niche. Okay, each species within an ecosystem has a different niche or a different role to play. Okay, if they had the same niche, okay, then they'd always be fighting for the same food if they ate the same thing, for the same habitats, okay, uh, same breeding areas, and then again, like time of day which they're most active. And so that's why you see sometimes they might have somewhere like there's similar places in the food web, but one hunts at night, one hunts during the day, and so then there's kind of less crossover. Okay, this is an example kind of showing the warblers. Okay, there's different types. So the yellow-rumped warbler, the green-throated, okay, Cape May. Each one actually prefers different parts of the tree, so they can all kind of coexist eating different parts of the tree, and there is not always that competition for each one. Okay, and so they each have their own place in the food web because they eat different things. Their habitats might be similar in breeding areas, but they're all there's going to be something that kind of sets them apart. Okay, Darwin's finches are another example, and we'll talk about them a lot more when we get into evolution in the next chapter. Competition for niches. So stable ecosystems have a stable amount of competition because each species has its own role. When a new species are introduced, we call them exotic species, that stability can be disturbed. So this can lead to drastic changes depending on the ecosystem or just little changes. Okay, exotic species is just the introduction of a new species to the ecosystem. Sometimes they'll be able, like they'll fit right in and be part of the ecosystem. Other times they can kind of take over. Okay, and so exotic species are one of the leading causes of extinction and species depletion, so second only to habitat loss. Okay, the problem occurs when exotic species has no natural enemies. Okay, and so that means if there's no natural enemies, there's nothing to kill it and eat it or anything like that, or to fight for those resources. And so those exotic species can continue to increase in size really rapidly because there's nothing killing them off. So if the exotic species is a predator, the prey may have no defense mechanism and could be rapidly decreased in size. Okay, or if it's prey, like then it might eat all of a certain type of tree, which anything else that relied on that tree would then not be able to survive. Okay, so examples. So the Canada thistle, purple loosestrife, zebra mussels, all examples of exotic species that got introduced. Okay, and they kind of just take over because there's nothing that can kill them off. Okay, another kind of word that you might have heard is, I guess exotic species works, but invasive species, or invasive species is another word for like species that come in and take over. Okay, competition. So every population will grow to the limit of its ability to obtain resources. Okay, they're going to reproduce until they can't get enough resources so they all survive. Two species in competition to one another for the same resource, one population will be reduced or eliminated. Okay, there's two main types of competition. So there's specific competition or intraspecific competition. We'll look at them. So interspecific competition is like typical competition. So natural conditions. So we have the separation of niches. So populations of similar animals can coexist. Okay, competition among similar species for a limited resource such as food. Again, like we said before, like if they have their different niches, one might hunt at night, one during the day, one might eat a different part of the tree compared to the other. So these are typical, they're natural. We want some of those because they keep the populations in check. Intraspecific competition. So these are competitions between organisms within the same population. Okay, so this involves the principles of natural selection and survival of the fittest. Okay, and so that's where like intraspecific competition. Okay, they're battling out like, and so that's where like lots of them have different breeding habits, things like that. So that the ones that are the best suited for the environment, survival of the fittest, those are the ones that survive. Okay, predation, so described as interaction between populations. So the predator-prey relationship, the density of each population is dependent on the survival of another. Okay, if you take away one of these in the relationship, it's going to cause a skew in like the food web and the food chains in that area. Symbiotic relationships, we talked about these a lot in grade 9. So definition, so a relationship in which two different organisms live in close association. So there's 3 different types: parasitic, commensalism, and mutualism. So parasitism, okay, this is where a parasite obtains nourishment from their host. Okay, the relationship is one way the parasite takes it from the host only. The host is not only usually damaged, but may have to obtain more nutrients in order to survive. Okay, and it can oftentimes really hurt the host and kill them eventually if it comes to it. So different types of tapeworms, fungus, elephantitis, so that's what's shown here. Okay, are all examples of parasitism. Okay, I know I was just watching on Our Planet, and it was showing like a fungus that grew in ants, and it actually like would kill them off and grow out of them. Okay, and the different spores would then get sent out. Okay, commensalism. Okay, this is an association in which one partner appears to benefit while the other shows neither positive nor negative effect. Okay, so example, kind of the clownfish and the sea anemone. Okay, the clownfish uses it for safety. Okay, and the sea anemone, it really doesn't benefit. Okay, mutualism. Okay, well, this is, whoops, cut off, but like a mutualism, both organisms benefit. Okay, so there are nitrogen fixing bacteria in legumes. Okay, pollination, things like that. So like in pollination, you think of like the bees pollinate all the plants, and then by doing that, the bees are also fed and like can make their honey and so on. All right, so look over that chapter. Like, so it's in chapter 4 of your textbook, 4.1. You've done your assignment. Okay, don't worry about these questions. Okay, they're sometimes good to look over to prepare for tests and things like that. Okay, but we're going to stop there for right now.